So we've been talking about focus, right? What does that mean? Focus, we're talking about spiritual habits. We're talking about focusing on Jesus, focusing on our relationship with Jesus. And in particular tonight, we're going to be talking about focusing on giving something up. Now, that could mean a lot of different things, but have you ever been asked the question, like you're on a desert island, right? It's like you're stranded on a desert island. What three things would you have with you? And obviously, you would need food, water, and shelter. But what about stuff? Like, what would you bring? Or I guess you wouldn't really have the chance to bring something, but what would you want with you? I think for me, it'd probably be like my guitar, my golf clubs, and maybe like a set of Harry Potter books or something. But because I wouldn't have power for my computer, so my computer would be pointless. But typically, the things that you would bring with you are the things that are most important to you. Now, some of us take that question literally, and you would take like a water filter and survival supplies, but that seems kind of lame. The question really is, what is your priority? So what would you spend your time doing if you were alone? I mean, that's really what it gets down to, is like, what would you spend your time doing if you were alone? This time of year, you might have friends that are doing Lent, especially if you have friends who are from a church that does things a little bit more traditionally than ours. But one of the pieces of this is fasting. One of the things that happens during Lent is fasting. And fasting is something that is talked about by Jesus a couple of times, but he never really goes in depth. He never really explains it all that well. And the purpose of fasting is self-denial. So meaning we're giving something up in order to focus better on something else. So in our case, it's Jesus that we want to focus on. So when it comes to fasting from something, one of the issues is we have to fill it. We have to fill that time with something else, right? You can't just take something away and expect nothing else to happen. If you don't fill that time, it will get filled by something or someone else. And usually one of the thing that it gets filled with is something that distracts us from why we're fasting in the first place. So tonight in our groups, we'll be talking about what it looks like for us to give something up in order to focus on God. And Jesus talks about this on the Sermon on the Mount, and following it, he talks about where your treasure is. So that's what we're going to talk about in our groups tonight. But throughout the Psalms, we read through the journal of David. And during the series, we're going to be kind of talking about what Jesus says, what's happening in the Psalms. And these Psalms, most of them are written by David. And David was somebody who made some pretty massive mistakes. Like, I'm not just talking about he said some bad things, or he did some seemingly unforgivable things to people. And these mistakes were massive, yet he's still known as a man after God's own heart. And the question is, why? How could this be after all the things that David has done and all the things that have gone wrong? And the answer is because no matter what happened in his life, he regularly turned back to God again and again. Because the truth is, none of us are really ever going to be perfect. So what we need to do is we need to take every opportunity to turn back and look to Jesus, to focus on Jesus. But Psalm 121, 1-2, it says this: I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And you might have heard that before, and you've probably seen it inscribed on the wall somewhere. But why do we give things up? Why do we do this? We step away from things so we remember where our help comes from. We need to remember why we are here. We need to remember why we do the things that we do. And we need to remember where our help comes from. Your stuff doesn't save you. Your sports team doesn't give you life. Your phone can't be there for you when it seems like life is spiraling out of control. So we look to Jesus and we focus.